All right, good evening, everyone. It is 5 o'clock here, May the 8th. We will begin the committee of the whole meeting. I will call this meeting to order. Land acknowledgement statement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, the culture of the Shinnebec, the people of Three Powers, now known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared these lands and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Approval for the agenda. The recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn, Councillor Day, discussion. Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. A declaration of pecuniary interest. Any of these, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? If so, you can declare at any time. Not seeing any. Announcements. Does any member wish to make an announcement? Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would just like to recognize that this is Municipal Clerks Week. And on behalf of Council, I'd like to recognize the efforts and importance of the role of our Municipal Clerk and Deputy Clerk, Carly-Ann Rayburn. Municipal Clerk being a legislated position, it's required by the Municipal Act. Our clerks look after drafting agendas and bylaws for our township. They record the minutes of council meetings, answer official correspondence, keep fiscal records and accounts, and prepare reports on civic needs and FIFA requests, and a whole lot more. Without our clerks, municipal business and local government would not continue. It's one of the most important positions within our organization and every municipal organization province-wide. I'd like to recognize our clerks and remind everyone of their importance and the value they bring to the organization. Thank you, Carly-Ann Rayburn.
Thank you for that, Mayor Carlson. Yes, echoed from all of us here to keep us all pointed in the right direction. It's very much needed. Thank you. Any other announcements? Not seeing any. All right. No public hearings tonight. Delegations, public question period. 7.1 is items on the agenda. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda shall make a written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. To register, www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. 7.2, items not on the agenda. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item not on the agenda may make written application to the clerk by the Thursday preceding the meeting they wish to speak at. Register www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729, extension 603. Correspondence, we have nil. We're right into staff reports. Development and infrastructure 9.1.1 DEV 2024-026 backyard poultry zoning bylaw. Recommendation reads that the council will receive staff report DEV 2024-026 backyard poultry zoning bylaw for information, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enact an amendment to the township's bylaw 2020-020 to permit backyard poultry as a permitted use on certain residential properties within the township. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Winters, Councillor Scholdice, and we will go to Michael for discussion on this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And, good evening, Mayor and Council. So back in January, Council may recall that we had a committee of the whole meeting, and Council received an information report on backyard poultry. And in that report, there were 3 recommendations that were posed for Council's consideration. Following some deliberation, Council passed a resolution to move forward with option 2. Option 2 was a staff direction to bring forward an amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit backyard poultry, but to not proceed with a registration program. Council is also aware several municipalities in in Ontario have been looking at backyard poultries, and more of them are permitting backyard poultry. Some have simply amended their zoning bylaws to recognize that use. Others have done the bylaw and registration programs. Some of them have put those programs in place permanently, and others have put them in as a temporary kind of a trial period for 1 to 3 years. So staff took that direction, went away for a while, and it seems like January is a long ways to go. But with things going, we had to bounce a few different agenda items and some priorities. So coming back now, hopefully still soon enough in the spring that if this is enacted, it can kind of move forward. Staff are we're essentially recommending an amendment to our zoning bylaw to implement backyard poultry permissions on residential lands that are larger than 0.2 hectares, which is a half acre in size. When you look at our bylaw now, section 5.13 provides some restrictions on livestock, and livestock typically would include poultry. So our bylaw now states that livestock is only permitted on rural and agricultural lands with a lot size of greater than 0.8 hectares in size. The amendments proposed will provide some definitions that we'll need as we move into the amending section 5.13. It also provides some better clarification as to when and when not backyard poultry are considered a permitted use. And thirdly, it provides some details on coop size and run sizes, and looks at the setback provisions that are already included in the bylaw for accessory structures, and also applies those to the hen enclosures and coops. Because there is no excuse me, registration program involved, I anticipate that the financial impacts to the municipality will be a lot less than there would be if there was a registration program involved, but there may still be some impact to our municipal law enforcement program, as I'm sure as we see more and more backyard poultries coming into play, there may be some bylaw related issues that arise. So we've created a draft bylaw for council's consideration, and I'm certainly open to any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Michael, for that. Comments from council? Councilor Goldberg.
Thank you. I have to say I was a little surprised at how short the bylaw is, and although I often appreciate brevity, I wonder if we might be missing a few things. For example, I think it refers to food for the purposes of food. Other municipalities' bylaws suggest that it should be the sale of eggs and other products associated with the keeping of chickens should not be allowed, because I do know that some who have had backyard chickens then put up the sale sign at the end of their laneway. I wonder if that might be something we might want to consider. When I read food, I guess I was just thinking eggs. But other municipalities specifically say that home slaughter of chickens is not allowed. I don't know if that's needs to be said, but perhaps we just need to be a little more restrictive. Others also suggest that the owner must be on property. So in other words, it shouldn't be a rental type of unit, just to manage those kinds of property standards and nuisance violations. And I wonder how we arrived at 6 chickens when some of as a maximum number, when a few of them at least have a maximum of 4. And if we're looking to be less restrictive rather than more lenient, I wonder if maybe you could provide some rationale for why we went with 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn, and through you to through Deputy Mayor Pringle to you. Those are actually good recommendations. I think looking at the food uses only as probably a wise inclusion in the bylaw. And one of the things that we need to look at when we look at that sort of a provision is that something that we can include in a planning act style bylaw, or is that something that would be more akin to matters that you would see in a registration program? I think so far, I think those could be included in the bylaw, including the basically no home slaughters of chickens, and even having viewers on site, I think would be good. That way it's not a rental property that's being used for that. The other piece in terms of the number of chickens, we did look at several zoning bylaws and tried to find a reasonable average that that would work. I also spoke to some of my colleagues in the county and further afield who had chicken bylaws in place, backyard poultry bylaws in place. And the ones that had the higher number of allowed poultry seem to also have more bylaw concerns associated with it. And, a number of municipalities had 10 birds that would be permitted. And they felt that if they were going to do it again, they would drop that number down somewhat. So it seemed like a good middle ground was 6 birds per property, but certainly open to any other suggestions.
Thanks, Michael. Am I reading the right bylaw? Because this one says a maximum of 10 hens. Page 1 of 2 under section 2A. It just seems excessive to me.
If I may, to Deputy Mayor, the draft bylaw that we did put forward does have a maximum of 10 birds per property. And that's based on a half-acre lot size. The other municipalities that I spoke to had smaller lot sizes and had 10 birds on a smaller lot size. So in fact, some of them had 10 birds even on what you would call like an urban setting, where your backyard is maybe 50 feet by 50 feet or something like that. So we looked at that in terms of allowing a larger lot size that we permitted, and therefore having the maximum number of 10 birds per property.
Thank you. Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So that might have partly answered my question. So are we limiting that they can only have chickens if it's a half acre yard or larger? Because we had, I think, initially discussed, could we limit 6 or under on smaller lots? But if we're stopping at the half acre, then that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yep, Councillor Day.
Thank you. And maybe it's me having a busy day and not processing this correctly. There's the report, the background report with information about housing and yard requirements with a roofed house and enclosed walls and food being secured in pest-proof containers and manure and waste being disposed of properly, and then the biosecurity. And then when I go to the other document, which is the bylaw, some of those items are missing from the bylaw itself. So I just wondering if some of those really important features of backyard chickens would get lost in the bylaw enforcement.
Go ahead, Michael.
through you, Deputy Mayor. Um, I did think about that in preparing the bylaw. And again, one of the things that I was kind of running up against was what would be typically found in a zoning bylaw compared to registration and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I neglected to put in the report, but it was something that was front of mind, was providing an information material that would go with the announcement of this permission going out that would provide some guidance to people having backyard poultry. What are some best practices? What kind of things would we be looking for? We certainly can try to be more restrictive in our bylaw, and not opposed to that at all. It's just that you can only go so far with a zoning type of bylaw under the Planning Act.
Thanks, Michael. No.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I might be able to navigate our way through this one, taking on board the points raised by Councillors Coburn and Day there. As per Mr. Benner, if we were to provide some education advisory material in supplement to this, so that if you were wishing to avail yourself of having some hens on your property or poultry on your property in the future, you conform with the zoning bylaw, and we use the communication materials that we would host as a way of describing what good practice would be. We have a very flexible nuisance bylaw, and so if a neighbour to a property that had hens or poultry on it found that they were causing a nuisance, then the nuisance bylaw certainly allows us to establish that without us having to, police hens. The nuisance bylaw, which does provide for a certain degree of bylaw involvement. If one property owner's activities are causing a nuisance to another's, we would be able to rely on the communication messages that we put out to help define what that nuisance might be.
Councillor Coburn.
This could be me having missed it, and if so, I apologize, but we refer to the zoning bylaw requirements in terms of setbacks and yard requirements, but we don't make reference to the nuisance bylaw, which I think we ought to here, so that when people are reading this bylaw, they're aware that there are other issues that they need to take into consideration as well. And I'm just going to say I'm still not necessarily feeling 100% comfortable with the maximum of 10 hens per half acre. I personally would have liked to have seen that be a little lower, just to minimize some of those issues that we might be seeing down the road.
Well,
So I think this is a bylaw that's being presented in draft. So if there was an alternative amended recommendation came onto the talk floor, then I'm sure that would be something that could be looked at. And yes, I take the point. We would make sure that as we lay this out with those communication messages, making sure that, talk to your neighbours, make sure that this is not going to be a problem for your neighbours, manage it in a way which is not going to disturb the neighbourhood and so on and so forth, and indicate that there are other bylaws that are applicable, such as property standards, yard standards, and the nuisance bylaw.
Coburn.
I'm the one that wanted a short meeting tonight, so shame on me. I think if we're going to advise people, they need to consult with their neighbors. I think that's a bit of a slippery slope. Other municipalities have in their bylaw that they need to consult with their neighbors. But I think if we suggest that people do that, we're maybe giving the impression that that's a requirement when it's not. I'm always in favor of an educational approach, but I think a lot of people just go ahead and look at the bylaw and move forward with whatever initiative it is and don't seek that education necessarily. So the more robust the bylaw is, I think the fewer issues we have down the road, I would suggest.
Thank you for that. Yes, Michael.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Might I suggest then, with council's direction on the number of birds permitted on a half-acre lot, that we further amend the bylaw to include provisions as the chickens can only be used for food purposes only, that the keeping of hens for sale is not allowed, home slaughter of chickens is not allowed. The owner needs to be on the property. It's not for rentals. And then also includes specifications for the coops and the chicken runs. I think we'd be safe including those in a further amended zoning bylaw.
Girl.
And recognize the other ones that come into play, the noise bylaw and that type of thing. Have those all listed, as Niall had listed all the ones. They should be included there just for clarity.
Yeah, so through your Deputy Mayor Pringle, those would be part of the ancillary information. I don't think we could reference those within the zoning bylaw.
Further comments? Councilor Winters?
Just further to everything, it's a great conversation. I agree with all of it there. Just reading this and trying to picture in my own mind, is this enforceable? What are the issues? Manure storage and smell. I mean, I can keep a coop 10 meters from a property line, and I can also pile manure 10 meters from a property line. And eventually, if I decide I'm going to keep it for organic purposes, there could be a smell issue. Does this bylaw, does our nuisance address that or allow us to have the teeth to deal with that should it arise?
So through your Deputy Mayor Bingle, that's exactly the sort of scenario that would fall within the nuisance bylaw. And the nuisance bylaw, we will double check, but we have some fairly broad statements in there, and certainly smell would be one of those things that would go in there, but we will double check.
Thank you for that. Further comments? One comment I would make on it is I found half an acre. That's a small lot. Like that's a small lot to get chickens on. My own opinion hasn't changed. I'm still not for it. I do believe for 10 chickens, we're opening up ourselves to a big avenue of bylaw enforcement for having problems with the neighbors. The list goes on and on and on. So I'm still not, I still got my mind made up where I want to go with it myself, but I get where the direction is with the council and staff. So it's a concern. 10 chickens on a half acre is going to cause neighbor problems. I don't care how it works out. And Brian's going to be a busy boy. And that's where I don't want to go, wasting time and money on 10 chickens. Let's go.
Can I make, further to that, Chair Pringle, can I make an amendment lowering the number of chickens to
Said.
So
no, I don't think that's going to change.
through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, and I'm going to look at the clerk here for advice. We haven't yet got anything other than the standing motion on the floor. There has been no amendment. We have heard Mr. Benner talk about potential for it being deferred to come back with subsequent changes. And we had a conversation around lowering the number. But at this point, I don't believe anything other than the original motion is standing. So I think we'd need something to be put on the floor.
So I'd like to put an amendment on the floor. Councilor Gober.
I'll move that the amendment include the list that Michael's provided, and I would move that we reduce the number of chickens to 6.
So, your person would be a. What am I trying to say? You're going to move that? You're going to move that? Okay, yes. Okay, Councilor Scholl likes to second that. All right, discussion. Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. We'll go back to the main motion as amended. And any more discussion on the main motion as amended? We have a mover and a seconder. Discussion. Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, 9.1.2, DEV 2024-027, no demand service for agreement for Pearson. The staff report DEV 2024-027, Pearson no demand for service agreement be received for information, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a no demand for service agreement with Michael Pearson for access to the Copies Range road allowance pending the receipt of the development permit from the Niagara Escarpment Commission for the subject lands. Mover and a seconder, please. Councilor Scholes, Councilor Winters, and we'll go to Michael again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll try to keep this one brief. The Pearson Zone property on the south side of Copies Range Road, quite quite a ways west of Cole Side Road. And that section of Colby's Range Road is it's not a year-round maintained road by any means. And the Pearsons have also applied to the Niagara Escarpment Commission to build a single-family dwelling on their property there. One of the requirements of the Niagara Escarpment Commission is to have municipal approval for entrances, and as we've seen in other areas where we have use of an unopened road allowance, Mr. Pearson needs or has requested that municipality enter into a no demand for service agreement with him, so that we can recognize this development on a lot that is not on a road that is not maintained on a year-round basis.
Thank you for that, Michael. Discussion from council, questions? Not seeing any then, I'll call, sir, Councillor Day.
Sorry. Thank you. Are there other properties impacted by this that are along the same stretch of road where other people would need to access the no demand for service road to get to their seasonal buildings?
Our no demand for service agreements are parcel specific and owner specific. They do tender on the property, but there are certainly other properties along this section of Colby's Range Road, and they are using that road at their own risks, I suppose, when it's not maintained. It really comes into play when you're building a new residence, and it goes against our bylaw to issue or to allow a dwelling to be constructed on a property that does not recognize as having frontage on a municipally opened road and or a maintained road. And that's where the no demand for service agreement comes into play. We're recognizing that particular property has access, but we're also recognizing that the municipality is not maintaining that access. That's what that agreement covers.
Go ahead, Councillor Day.
So it won't impact access for the other property owners along that road. And my other very related question is just double checking how it affects Bruce Trail parking for the Bruce Trail access in that area.
This agreement is simply between municipality and Mr. Pearson. The agreement will not have a bearing on other users of that road, including the Bruce Trail Association. It's strictly an agreement with the landowner.
Any further questions? This is really a stepping stone into the Niagara Escarpment Commission too, like we're just part of the process to get to that point. So
That's correct.
yeah, and I fully support this moving forward myself. So anyway, we got a mover and a seconder. No further discussion. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, 9.1.3 DEV 2024-028, no demand for service agreement. Miller. Recommendation reads that staff report DEV 2024-028, Miller, no demand for service agreement be received for information, and the council authorized the mayor and clerk to enter into a no demand service agreement with Colin Miller for access onto the road allowance between lot 28 and 29 concession 17 of lot 28 and 29 concession 18, capital pending on the receipt of the development permit from the Niagara Escarpment Commission for the subject lands. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Winters, Mayor Carlton, and we're back to Michael.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Another no demand for service agreement report. This property is actually located on the south side of Bass Lake, essentially east of Sutherland Road and certainly east of South Bass Lake Road. The property itself is kind of a long narrow piece, and it reaches down to the road allowances, as mentioned above, between lots, between concession 17 and concession 18. The Millers have applied to the Niagara Escarpment Commission to build a seasonal dwelling on the property. They actually do have a cabin there now, and that cabin has run afoul of a few of our bylaws, as well as the Niagara Escarpment Commission's rules. So they're correcting that. They're actually building a new seasonal dwelling in an area that's permitted, but very similar to the Pearsons. As through the Niagara Escarpment Commission process, they need approval from the municipality to be able to access that property. And so they're looking for a no demand for service agreement on a section of a road allowance that would run east of South Bass Lake Road to the along the frontage of their property.
Thank you for that. Comments from council? I'm not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, 9.2.1 CES 2024-011 awarded contract services. Recommendation reads that council hereby approves the following awards for contract services provided for 1 year with the possibility of 2 single-year extensions. Number 1, Ken Phillip Plumbing and Heating and Ken Phillip Climate Care as the primary heating and mechanical and plumbing for all the township facilities. Number 2 is the Beckett Tree Services as the primary tree removal and trimming services contractor. Number 3 is Ron Pringle Electrical Limited as the primary electrical contractor and the street light repair and maintenance services contractor. And 4, Blue Water Sanitation as a primary portable toilet rental and servicing contractor. I need a mover and a seconder. Scholes, Mayor Carlton, and Jerry, I'm going to you for this one.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, this report was tendered for the sole purpose of creating solidified unit rates for contractors for regular maintenance work in the municipality in the right of way, as well as our township facilities.
Thank you for that. Any comments, any questions from the council? Councillor Colbert.
This is very minor, but I wonder if we have the spelling of this individual's last name. It's not Philip, it's Philp, Philp, if I have the right company. I just noticed that in the report as well as in the recommendations.
Touch on that. Okay, thank you. All right.
We will make that change.
Thank you for that. All right, Councillor Winters.
And just a quick question through you to Jerry there. Was there a lot of interest in this service for the municipality?
Any one particular that you're referencing, or altogether?
Just kind of all together as a generalization, right? Is it well received? Did we get a lot of interest in it, or we got the bare bones?
Yeah, not a whole lot of interest. We had 2 for tree trimming and 2 for the portable washrooms, but only 1 submission for both, like for the street lights, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. It's just the 1 on each.
Thank you for that. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Winters.
Just want to clarify. I think these are good choices, and I'm impressed with it, the quality that each of these bring to the table. But I'm just wondering as an overall question. Thank you.
Oh, good comments. Any further comments? We'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. 9.2.2 CES 2024-012 community engagement of off leash dog park. Recommendation reads that staff be directed to complete a community engagement process on the potential for establishing an off leash dog park in Georgian Bluffs. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Scholes, Councillor Day, and Niall, are you speaking to this?
So through your Deputy Mayor Pringle, I can offer a quick comment, but no presentation or formal sort of talk. This really stems from the budget conversations where this was deferred for budget 2025 pending a community engagement. So this is really just the approval of that community engagement process to kick off.
Thank you. Comments from council? Councillor Goldberg.
I think it all sounds great. I found it curious that this one did not mention any increase in bylaw enforcement, as the backyard chicken one did, because for sure a dog park is going to involve more bylaw activity. And I just think it's really, really important that we're careful where we decide to place this one so that we're not impacting folks that live in the area.
Here comes now.
Just for clarity, this is just an engagement process at this point. We're not moving forward with an off-leash park anywhere. Some of the questions around this will be seeking community feedback, both from dog owners and non-dog owners. So non-dog owner voices will be as important as dog owner voices in this one, as to the pros and cons of off-leash facilities, and seeking information as to if one is to be put in, where could it go? And so this is an engagement which will reach out to all members of community, as I say, both dog owners and non-dog owners, as everybody uses these spaces right now. And at this point, there are no decisions being made.
Thank you now for that. Yes, Councillor Solis.
Thank you. So I think this is important to engage further with the community in terms of hearing voices of pros and cons, and maybe from people as well who aren't necessarily in favor of the dog park. I guess my question to you now is, do you know how you're planning on engaging within the community? How do you plan to go about doing that? What are your plans for that?
So thank you for the question through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle. So the bulk of the engagement on this one will sit online, because it's a tool which we can promote fairly far and wide. We will do targeted Facebook media advertising as we do. We found that to be one of the most effective tools of reaching residents in the community and inspiring good feedback. There will also be promotion of this, I'm sure, on the radio. We'll do our best to get that out there. And this will also be a feature of the Connect and Collaborate event in June. So there will be in-person opportunities to share perspectives as well. We would also welcome anyone, as with any of our engagements, if they choose not to do it on the online survey, they're more than welcome to phone the office at any point in time. Somebody will quite happily help them through the survey. We'd also welcome anyone to email myself directly at the township seeking further information, or phone me up and have a conversation, and we'll capture it that way. So the survey will be the backbone, but as with all of our engagements, we welcome anyone participating in any way, that shape or form that they so desire.
Thanks, all. Councillor Day.
You just a quick question, since the opportunity is here. As I'm reminded continually by my high school students, it's only the old folks who use Facebook. Sorry if you didn't know. Do we also use Instagram to get the word out to the younger residents within the municipality? Not just the high school students, but the 20-year-olds and to 30-year-old.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, awesome question. I believe that the world of Meta now includes both Facebook and Instagram, and so advertising will probably cross across both platforms, but I will work up with communications with Hayley just to make sure that that's the case. As I say, Facebook tends to be the platform we get the highest level of engagement from, and that may well speak to a demographic that engages with us. But we do have profiles on Twitter and Instagram, so we do have active areas there. I should note that the level of interaction on our Instagram feed and on our Twitter is quite low. And so they're definitely not the most active platforms that we have, but we do have those platforms, and I'll work with communications to try and get this out as far and wide as we can.
Thank you, Noel. Councillor Winters.
Thank you. All great discussions, but refresh my memory on, we do a newsletter. Do we do it twice a year with the taxes? There'll be one coming out in the summer. Is that something that should be put in there too for an engagement process, potentially, for those that don't use the social media and look forward to that?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, great idea. And not that I'm going to burst your thunder, but burst a thunder that's about to come. There's going to be more than one newsletter a year that's going to be available as well to residents over coming time, so we can promote through that.
Thanks for that, Noel. Well, I'm still trying to get over the sticker shock of what I just heard from Counselor Day there, that Facebook's for old people. I didn't know that's where we were at. Yeah. Yeah, I'll get over it. Anyway, any further discussion? Not saying any, call the vote. All's in favor? That is carried. All right, we're on to our last one here, 9.3.1 corporate services, COR 2024-017, reserve and reserve fund transfers. Recommendation reads that council approve the annual transfer to, from reserves and reserve fund accounts as detailed herein, and that 2023 surplus be transferred as follows: 25% to the climate change reserve and 75% to the working capital reserve. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn, Councillor Thompson. Thank you. I'm going to go to Samantha for this.
Thank you. And through you, this is an annual report that you will receive each year that summarizes your reserve and your reserve fund transfers. Reserve funds and reserve fund transfers are discussed typically at our budget time, as well as there may be one-off reports throughout the year where funds are approved to be funded, or projects, sorry, are approved to be funded from any specific reserve. This report is based on the actuals that have been incurred in 2023. It does not reflect if a project spans over a year end. So what an example of that we have right now is our asset management plan. It started in 2023, so the funds that are being taken from reserves are only those 2023 portions. There will still be funds in 2024 that will be taken from that same reserve. You have three types of reserves, being your general reserves, your discretionary reserves. The difference between those two are discretionary reserves are interest earning, general reserves are not. So with that, you do see a large investment income, which when I talk about the surplus, I will get to. Staff are working on your reserve and reserve fund policy to hopefully have a new one in front of you, which would remove and reallocate some of your general reserves to be discretionary reserves, which would allow them to earn interest and decrease that investment income in your general fund. Your third type of reserve is obligatory reserves. Those are reserves that are set up from an external governing body. So they are your Parkland, your CCBF, which is your former gas tax. The report summarizes all the transfers that have occurred. I'm happy to answer questions on any of those, but I'm just going to jump quickly to the surplus side before we go to that. You will see a large surplus. When we look at how we kind of came to that surplus, and this number is not finalized, we're still working through our financial year end, so it is subject to change. But almost 73% of it is you had more income coming in than what you had originally budgeted. 50% of it is that investment income. So to address that, when we are looking at our reserve policy, that will be one way that we can address that we no longer have that. We also have the huge prime rates right now that are impacting that. We can't guess at budget time what prime will do throughout the year. So we do our best when we are budgeting to come up with a amount. Unfortunately, last year that amount was too low. We did increase it for our 2024 budget to try and reflect that. You will also have a strategic session coming up where we will be discussing user fees, that we can look at that complement of user fees to determine if there's ways within our user fees that we can help offset our tax levy that way to help mitigate that income earned in excess of budgeted revenue. Although 73% of your surplus was combined from more income coming in than what you had budgeted, there is a portion where it is around the expenditures. When we're looking at the unspent expenditures, majority of it is due to vacancies. There were numerous vacancies that occurred for short and extended periods of time, and due to those vacancies, staff were performing multiple duties. That work was still getting accomplished, but maybe not to the same magnitude. As we didn't have people here, we saw less training occurring. Then there were the expenditures where we did go over what we budgeted. The main one being their legal. There were some unfortunate legal cases that were larger. We do not need to, because we still have a surplus, I am not proposing additional funding aspects that your income earned in excess will offset those overtures. Back in, I believe it was February, council had received a staff report where it created the 25% of any operating surplus to go into a climate change reserve. As part of the reserve and reserve fund policy updates, we'll be looking at setting parameters around what that money can be spent on and where the money will always come from. We recognize that 25% of any operating surplus, but in the event of a operating deficit year, does that mean that 25% is coming from that account? That has not been determined yet. That is something that will come through when you are looking at your reserve and reserve fund policy, though. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Samantha, for that. Questions from council? Yes, Councillor Winters.
It's great news. There's $1.2 million in reserves or surplus that we can put in reserves. Timing last night was kind of key. Actually, I was out driving around the municipality and then I got home to read my agenda. And I read this and I think it's great. But on the other aspect, putting money into the bank because we can is great. But it's like paving your driveway when your roof of your house leaks. Our road conditions are kind of in a state of deterioration. And do we take some of that reserve instead of putting it surplus and putting it into reserve? Do we as a council suggest that maybe we do some sort of national preservation program or expand our surface treatment or do something to protect our assets so we're not going to cost the municipality more money in the future? That's kind of what resonated in my mind there last night, and thought, okay, it's great to be able to do that, but saving money may cost us money. And if we actually do something else this year with some of this or portion of it or whatnot, that's just my suggestion and my thoughts.
Oh, great comments for sure. Yes, Merkel.
Thank you. I think my one thought on that is the investment interest income that we get. And I guess I'm a little against playing with that too much to try and bring it in more accurately, because that can be somewhat that bonus money that comes. We could also get caught the other way where we say, well, we think we're going to get 500,000 and we only get 200,000. I think I'd sooner see it staying as that bonus that could maybe then go with what Councillor Winters is saying, and we use a portion of that to go into a road program and consistently do something like that. Would make more sense than trying to guesstimate what that's going to be each year.
Comments. Anyone else? No further comments? I will call the vote. All those in favor? Oh. Good.
And maybe I was going to say, if we approve it as it is, we're
see.
putting everything into reserves as suggested. If we as council decide that we'd like to take a portion of that or some of all of it or whatever this case may be, this is the time maybe to put that amended motion on the table. I would like to put that amended motion on the table. I just don't have a dollar value of what I think that is. Is that $250,000? Is that $500,000? Is it a motion that investment income, which is a bonus to us that exceeds it, is it that dollar value that we take if it's available and put that into some sort of capital program moving forward?
Yep, go ahead. Councillor Bowen.
I think that's a responsible thing to do. We increased our tax rate, and I think it shows by putting into some kind of capital project that we all know is needed. It shows the ratepayers that we didn't increase their levy just to bank the money, where that this way it's going to something concrete that everyone hopefully will benefit from.
Yeah, no, great points. Yeah, sorry about Councillor Winters there. Should have asked more clarification on that. But yeah, even if you took 25% of the 75% of the capital working budget, you're working at 300,000. Go ahead.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I am going to let the Treasurer perhaps make the first comment on this one. I think we've got a way which will achieve what you want, but I will let the Treasurer go first, and then I have a couple of comments, if I may add to the back of that.
Go ahead, Samantha.
So thank you through you. So from a financial statement perspective, thinking of our auditors here and putting my cap on there a bit, we do either need the funds to go into a reserve so that you have a zero surplus on your financial statements, or if you are comfortable showing a surplus on your financial statements. I feel there are ways to still accomplish what Councillor Winters is asking for if there's a slight amendment to the motion, But if it is left, the funds go into reserves, we can have it asterisk that they are used for a certain project in that reserve, that I will allow Niall to speak to that aspect.
Yeah, so through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I think we had a quick sidebar there. I apologise for that. But if the report comes as stands and everything happens like this, there is nothing to stop us as staff coming back to you with a request to undertake a project funded by the working capital. And there's about 900,000 you're putting into working capital in this report as it stands at this point in time. We can use that 900,000 as an indication. I can go and work with the team and see if there is capacity to bring projects forward this year. We would bring those projects forward to you as a request to draw down from the working capital using that 900,000 or a number less than that 900,000 that you could do. The other alternative direction would be simply to direct staff to bring back a package of works, which would be both what we would anticipate doing in 2025 plus an additional 900,000 to be drawn down from the working capital at that point in time. I.e., I think we can let the report stand and we can achieve what you are looking for, which is to bring forward additional works. I just don't want to commit to that without having spoken to my team. I do know we have a pretty packed program that we've just got started. There might be some low-hanging fruit we can put out the door fairly quickly, but I do want to double check with the team. But there is nothing that would prevent us from doing that if this paper was to pass as is. We just come back and ask to take the budget from the working capital for those projects in when they come forward.
Thank you for that. No, yes, Councillor Winters.
I'd agree to that. But then we agreed to that, and my recommendation is that we vote for that and say that, and then under notice of motion, I would then introduce a motion to say that I would like to direct staff to come up with a asphalt preservation, surface treatment preservation program to be implemented in 2024 to be funded by reserves. And I think if that does the same thing, I don't want to do a new capital project. I don't want a replacement. The intent of what I was bringing forward is a preservation. Let's spend a little money. Let's put a single surface on. Let's seal the surfaces. Let's prevent further deterioration. Let's stop this pothole invasion that we have going on. Let's get that surface sealed. That's kind of what I was looking for. I don't want to see one road come back and say, here's a $500,000 road I want to reconstruct. That's a capital for 2025. I want to preserve what we have.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Pringle, I think the wording you've just done would be a perfect additional direction to add to this report, and staff have clear direction there as to what we can do.
So we're going to amend the motion. Is that how Carter wants to do this? Don't ask me to repeat it.
I would ask for a nod around the table. I'm okay accepting this motion as it's here, but I will bring up a further motion as a notice of motion to do that. Is that probably the proper way to do it?
I think you don't need to bring back a notice of motion. I think you could add this as a direction to the report. No? You actually want this completely separate. Yes. Can we vote on it tonight?
So, so we're back to the.
Sorry, I just wanted kind of questioning on that investment income. If when we're looking at, and I don't know if it fits in with the reserve, but if we can have a direction that whatever investment income comes, rather than trying to keep it down to as close to zero for surplus each year, but have a policy of how we use investment income each year, that we direct that so that it automatically goes somewhere, which somewhat takes down the surplus then, but we've directed that somewhere.
Yes.
Go ahead, Samantha.
So through you, there are numerous policies that I'm trying to work on right now, and an investment policy is just one of those numerous policies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? We'll go back to the original motion. We're going to call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Unfinished business, nil. New business is nil. Notice of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion? Councillor Winters.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's like there's an echo in the room. Yeah, I'd like to put forward the motion that we bring back in a further council agenda that we consider taking an additional $500,000 out of reserves to do some asphalt preservation program in 2024.
That? Yes. No, it's the motion, so we're good. So we don't need a seconder on that. We're all good. Perfect. Closed session, we don't have any. Date of our next regular meeting is May the 15th at 5 p.m. And then we have committee of the whole June the 5th at 5 p.m. I now need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn, Councillor Shouldice, discussion. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting? Is that where I'm at? Certainly. Adjourn the meeting. Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. We are adjourned.